Imagine, just for a second, that you're hiring a professional carpenter.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right, so you've got this big project in mind, and you bring this highly skilled professional over to your house. You walk them straight into your backyard, point at the empty lawn, and you just say, all right, I need you to get to work.
Just pointing at the grass.
Exactly. And before picking up a hammer, before even looking at a single piece of wood or checking a measurement or asking what your budget is, the carpenter asks the most fundamental question in the world. They say, what are you actually trying to build?
Which is, I mean, it's the only logical response, right?
Exactly.
You wouldn't just hand a stranger a pile of 2x4s and a nail gun and say, like, start swinging, and then just cross your fingers hoping a beautiful gazebo magically appears on your lawn by sunset.
Right. It's ridiculous. So welcome back, divers. Let's just jump right in today. Because the scenario we just described, it sounds completely absurd in the physical world.
Oh, totally. You would fire that carpenter immediately.
On the spot. If they just started blindly nailing boards together without a blueprint, done. But here is the wild thing we're uncovering in today's classroom deep dive. It's that too many of the artificial intelligence systems that we all use every single day, they operate exactly like that blind carpenter.
They really do. I mean, current AI models are fundamentally designed to just swing the hammer the millisecond you hand them the tool.
Yeah.
They immediately start producing answers or generating thousands of lines of code or, writing these dense essays and rendering highly detailed images all before they possess any actual understanding of the outcome you're trying to achieve.
And that right there brings us to the core mission for this deep dive. We're unpacking a concept from our sources called the intent gap. And for everyone listening right now, the divers out there, I want to give you the plain English bottom line right out of the gate.
Let's hear it.
The thesis is basically this. The highest value AI of the future will not answer your first question. It will understand your real objective. Because right now, the systems we rely on, they start working before they have any clue what you actually want.
And, bridging that intent gap changes absolutely everything about how we interact with technology. The evolution of this it doesn't rely on simply generating faster answers.
Right.
Or having a larger context window or stringing together more articulate paragraphs. It relies entirely on shifting from this model of blind execution to a model of actual goal comprehension.
But wait, I'm going to challenge that premise right away. Let me play devil's advocate here, based on how I actually use these tools.
Go for it.
If I type a very specific prompt into a system, say, write a Python script to scrape the pricing data off this specific website, and the AI spits out perfectly functional code in 2 seconds, isn't that a massive success? I mean, as an end user, if the AI gives me exactly what I asked for, word for word, why is that suddenly being framed as a problem? Shouldn't the burden just be on me to get better at asking questions?
So that is the dominant philosophy right now, which is exactly why we've seen this massive explosion of prompt engineering as a discipline.
Oh, yeah. Tons of courses on
Right. We've been conditioned to think the human is the manager and the AI is the intern. But there's a huge distinction between the speed of generation and the actual understanding of intent. The danger of getting exactly what you asked for is that humans are, frankly, incredibly bad at asking for what they actually need.
So you're saying that flawlessly executing on my prompt might just be like a faster way for me to fail at my actual job.
Exactly. I mean, let's look at the mechanics of your Python script example.
Okay.
You asked for a web scraper for competitor pricing. The AI builds it flawlessly, but what was your actual goal? Your latent intent wasn't just to own a Python script, right?
Right. I don't care about the script itself. I care about, well, not losing customers to a cheaper rival.
Exactly. Your intent was probably to ensure your company's products remain competitively priced in real time. So the AI gave you a scraper. But maybe the competitor's website has anti-scraping protections that will ban your IP address tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Or maybe they offer a public API that the AI knew about, but it didn't mention it because you specifically asked for a scraper.
Right. It just followed orders.
Right. Or maybe their pricing fluctuates based on inventory, which means a daily scrape is totally useless and you actually needed a real-time predictive model. By giving you exactly what you literally asked for without questioning that underlying goal, the AI has successfully generated this brittle short-term fix that completely masks the real problem.
Yeah, it's deeply frustrating when you frame it that way.
Yeah.
Because if the system doesn't know why I want the data, it can't tell me that I'm going about getting it in the dumbest way possible.
Exactly. And If we scale that up, think of it from an organizational efficiency standpoint.
Huh?
Let's say an executive asks an AI to generate a 50-page report on European market trends because they think they need all that data to decide on a new product launch. The AI executes flawlessly in 10 seconds. What is the actual result?
The executive now has a 50-page document sitting on their desk that they have to read. Sunday night dread right there.
Yes, which creates way more work.
I would actively dread opening that file.
Because you didn't actually want the report. You wanted the decision. You wanted confidence in a direction.
Right.
The intent gap is that vast, dangerous space between the literal request, give me a report, and the real objective, which is help me make a safe decision. When AI systems fail to bridge this gap, they don't just waste compute time. They actively create cognitive burden for the user.
They hallucinate, right.
Oh, constantly. They generate hallucinations because they are trying to blindly guess the context that you didn't provide. And they trap the user in that endless, exhausting cycle of prompt revisions.
Man, I know that cycle so intimately. You get the output, it's wrong, so you tweak a word, make it shorter.
Make it punchier.
Right. No, make it less formal.
Oh,
Wait, no, make it sound confident but not arrogant. You aren't collaborating with an intelligence at that point.
Not at all.
You were just throwing darts in the dark, hoping the machine accidentally stumbles into your unstated intent.
Exactly.
But this raises a huge question for me. If getting exactly what we ask for is so unhelpful and that prompt revision cycle is so miserable, why do we keep doing it? Like, why are we neurologically hardwired to ask AI to solve the wrong problems?
It really comes down to cognitive load and evolutionary psychology.
Okay, unpack that.
The root cause of the intent gap isn't a technological glitch in the AI. It is a deeply ingrained human habit. Humans naturally think in terms of solutions, whereas experts think in terms of problems.
Hold on, say that again. Humans think in solutions, experts think in problems.
Yes. Identifying a root problem requires a massive amount of cognitive energy. It requires abstraction, self-awareness, patience. Jumping to a solution that's fast, it's cheap, and it gives this immediate illusion of progress. Think about a biological example. If you have a severe recurring headache, your immediate thought is not, oh, I need to map my sleep cycles, analyze my daily hydration levels, and check the ergonomics of my office chair to find the systemic root cause of this pain.
Right, no way. Your brain just screams, I need an aspirin right now?
Exactly. You ask for the immediate solution to the surface level symptom.
That makes perfect sense. Asking for the aspirin is a literal request. The true intent is, I want my body to function optimally. But diagnosing that takes time and energy I just don't want to spend. So we bring that exact same biological laziness into our interactions with technology.
We do. We absolutely do. And we can draw a direct parallel here to the world of high-level business consulting.
Oh, good analogy.
If you hire a top-tier management consultant, I'm talking someone billing thousands of dollars an hour, they don't operate like a standard AI chatbot. If a CEO brings them in and says, we're losing market share, we need you to design a new marketing campaign, a good consultant does not immediately pull out a whiteboard and start brainstorming slogans.
Right, because if they just execute the literal request, they aren't providing expert value. They are just acting as an expensive pair of hands.
Exactly. They spend significantly more time defining the problem than actually solving it. They excavate the true need. They push back. They ask, why do you think a marketing campaign is the solution? What if your product quality has dropped? What if your supply chain is too slow? What if your customer service is driving people away?
They adopt a diagnostic mindset.
Right. And the source material argues that for AI to cross the intent gap, it must be fundamentally redesigned to adopt this exact same consultant mindset. It cannot be an eager order taker. It has to be an investigator.
I love that. Let's unpack some of the specific examples our sources provide regarding this psychological disconnect, because it really highlights how often we ask for the wrong thing.
Yeah, let's dive into it.
One concept that really stood out to me in the reading is the idea that people constantly ask for more automation, when what they actually need is less repetitive work.
That is such a subtle distinction, but structurally it's massive. Let's break down the mechanics of that. When someone says, I need automation, what are they fundamentally doing?
Well, they are prescribing a specific technological tool. They're saying, I have this convoluted, highly annoying 14-step process I have to do in Excel every single Friday at 4:30 p.m. I want you to build a robot script to do those 14 steps for me.
But look at the fragility of that solution. You deploy an automation tool just for the sake of it. You build a script that basically just mimics human clicks.
Right.
But what happens when Microsoft updates Excel? Or what happens when the legal department changes the reporting requirements from 14 steps to 15?
The script just completely breaks
Yeah,
immediately.
exactly. The system is incredibly brittle because it was built on the literal request for automation rather than the underlying intent.
And the underlying intent is literally just, I hate doing this boring stuff. Please reduce the friction in my day so I can go home at 5 p.m.
Precisely. So the expert consultant, or the intent-aware AI, analyzes that 14-step process and steps back. It asks, why are we even doing these 14 steps? What is the data actually being used for?
Right, questioning the premise.
Yeah, and it might discover that the report is sent to a manager who only ever looks at one specific metric. So the AI says, instead of automating a broken 14-step process, what if we just eliminate 13 of the steps entirely? Let's pipe that single metric directly into the manager's dashboard. The repetitive work just ceases to exist.
That is the difference between a tool and a solution. You asked for the hammer to pound in 100 nails faster, but the intent-aware system realized you just wanted the boards to stay together, and it handed you a bottle of wood glue. The friction is gone, and the structural integrity is actually better.
That's a great way to put it.
So the core lesson here for you divers listening is that intent always sits beneath the surface of the request. We constantly ask for the mechanism, but what we actually crave is the outcome.
And to make this psychological theory incredibly concrete, the research offers 4 real-world case studies where this intent gap derails progress. These are everyday scenarios that expose the limits of literal execution.
Oh, these are great. Let's tear into the first one. Case study 1 focuses on the content creator, and it highlights something called metric-driven intent. So picture a YouTuber. They sit down at an AI image generator, and the literal prompt is, make me a YouTube thumbnail featuring a surprised person pointing at a glowing box.
We've all seen that exact thumbnail.
The classic Mr. Beast face.
Right. And a standard diffusion model will do exactly what they ask. It will process the text, add some dramatic lighting, maybe boost the saturation, and spit out a highly detailed, aesthetically pleasing image. It executed the prompt flawlessly.
But the output is still a failure. Because the creator doesn't want an image just to print it out and hang it on their refrigerator.
Yeah.
They don't care about the aesthetic beauty of the pixel arrangement. The latent intent, the only reason they're asking for this image is to increase the click-through rate of their video.
And this is where we have to look at the mechanism of how an intent-aware AI would approach this differently. If the goal is maximizing a specific metric like click-through rate, the AI needs to understand the psychological landscape of the platform, not just the rules of digital art.
Right.
An AI, functioning as an expert, would intercept that prompt and essentially interrogate the creator.
It would pause and ask, wait, who is the target audience for this video? Are we aiming for gamers, financial analysts, or kids?
Exactly. It would ask, what is the psychological hook of the video's title, and how can the image create a curiosity gap that forces a click?
Oh, that's smart.
What colors stand out against YouTube's dark mode interface? Has the specific style of surprised face been overused in your niche recently, leading to banner blindness?
So it completely shifts from being a digital painter to being a conversion strategist. That completely changes the value proposition of the software.
It's night and day.
All right, let's move to case study 2, which is about the prompt engineer focusing on scale and permanence. The literal request here is so common now. Give me a better prompt. Like, you get frustrated that the AI isn't writing your marketing emails correctly, so you ask the AI to write a better prompt that you can then feed back into the AI. It's this incredibly meta, snake eating its own tail situation.
It is a massive trap. When you ask for a better prompt, you are micro-optimizing a single ephemeral interaction. You're trying to find the magic sequence of words that will unlock the exact email you want today. But what is your actual intent?
Right.
Your intent isn't to become a master of whispering to millions. Your intent is to build a reliable, repeatable workflow. You want to know that every time you need a marketing email, it sounds like your brand, it hits the right word count, and it includes a call to action.
I see what you're saying. If I spend an hour crafting the perfect prompt, I might get a great email today. But next week, when I need another email, I have to remember that prompt or copy-paste it from some messy Notion doc and hope the AI model hasn't been updated in a way that breaks my magic words.
Exactly. An intent-aware system recognizes that asking for a prompt is actually a symptom of a missing system.
Oh, that's a great point.
Right. Instead of generating a paragraph of instructions for you to copy, you would say, it sounds like you need a permanent template for product launch emails. Let's define your brand voice once, lock in your structural requirements, and create a dedicated workflow. From now on, you just give me the product name, and I will route it through this established protocol. It moves the user from a fragile, one-off transaction to a durable, systemic solution.
Okay, case study 3 is fascinating because I think every person who works in a corporate environment has lived through this at some point. We'll call this the tech-first trap.
Hmm.
The scenario is a business leader, like a C-suite executive, and their literal request is, we need an AI chatbot for our company.
We see this constantly. It's totally driven by the panic of falling behind. The board is asking about their AI strategy. Competitors have chatbots on their homepages, so the mandate comes down from on high. Buy a chatbot immediately.
So they spend, what, $500,000 licensing a tool, integrating it, rolling it out.
Right.
But what happens? It's a complete disaster. Because what was the real goal? According to our sources, when an executive asks for an internal chatbot, their latent intent is almost always to solve a catastrophic knowledge management problem.
Always.
Employees are spending 3 hours a day just trying to find the right HR form, or the updated branding guidelines, or the specs for a legacy product.
This is the danger of prescribing a trendy solution instead of diagnosing the organizational illness. The illness is scattered, siloed knowledge. You have data hidden in old Jira tickets, outdated PDFs, buried in nested folders, confusing SharePoint sites that nobody knows how to navigate.
Nightmare.
If you just slap a natural language processing chatbot on top of that broken foundation, you have not solved the problem.
No, you've just created a highly articulate conversational interface for your disorganized mess.
Yeah.
You've built a robot whose only job is to confidently tell employees, I also have no idea where the vacation request forms are.
Exactly. It amplifies the inefficiency. An intent-aware approach, whether from a human consultant or an advanced AI architect, would reject the initial request. It would say, before we even discuss a conversational interface, we need to talk about data ontology.
Wow, okay.
We need to restructure how this company stores, tags, and retrieves information. We have to map the knowledge graph. Once the house is clean and the knowledge is actually managed, then the chatbot interface is the easy part.
It's the classic mistake of confusing the UI with the infrastructure.
100%.
Finally, let's look at case study 4. The homeowner. This is a brilliant exploration of user experience. The literal request is, I want smart lights.
Oh, this is the ultimate example of technology introducing friction when intent is ignored. So a homeowner decides they want to upgrade. They go to the hardware store, buy a bunch of expensive Wi-Fi-enabled bulbs, download the proprietary app, create an account, try to connect them to the router.
And suddenly, their life is measurably worse. Because let's look at the friction here. It's 2 a.m., you wake up, you're groggy, and you just want a glass of water from the kitchen. Under the old system, you walk into the kitchen, your hand automatically hits the physical switch on the wall, the light comes on, zero cognitive load.
But with the smart solution they asked for, what happens? They walk into the dark kitchen, they have to find their smartphone, they have to unlock it, squinting at this incredibly bright screen. They have to locate the specific smart home app. They wait for it to connect to the cloud. They navigate to the kitchen tab, and they slide a digital toggle.
It took them 30 seconds of active cognitive work to do something that used to take half a second of muscle memory. They asked for smart lights, and they got them. But their true intent was entirely different. Their latent intent was simply, when I walk into a dark room, I want to be able to see, and I don't want to have to think about it.
And this reveals a really profound truth about design. A traditional physical analog light switch is actually highly intent-aligned for the specific friction of entering a dark room. It has perfect physical affordance.
It's already solved the problem.
Exactly. If an AI or a smart home designer actually understood the intent, which is reducing friction, they wouldn't suggest an app-controlled bulb. They would suggest a simple motion sensor. You walk in, the light turns on, you walk out, it turns off. The technology disappears entirely into the background.
I love that example because it proves that sometimes the most intent-aware solution is actually less technology, not more. So divers, let's synthesize what we've uncovered so far. We've defined the intent gap. We've explored the psychological reality that humans are biologically wired to ask for surface-level solutions, the aspirin, the prompt, the chatbot, instead of diagnosing their underlying problems. And we've seen how taking those literal requests at face value derails everything from marketing to home automation,
Right. It's everywhere.
which forces us to look at the architecture of the machines themselves. Like, how do we fundamentally redesign AI systems to bridge this gap automatically?
Well, to understand the solution, we have to clearly separate the mechanics of what AI does right now, the hard facts of current models, from the predictions of what AI architecture must become in the near future.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Let's start with the hard fact. Right now, large language models function primarily as reactive generation engines.
Like a massively overpowered autocomplete.
Exactly. When you type a prompt, the system breaks your words into tokens, maps the statistical probability of what word should come next based on its training data, and immediately begins execution. It is highly reactive, like a sprinter waiting for the starting pistol. The absolute millisecond you hit enter, it starts running down the track.
But the prediction from the source material is that tomorrow's AI will require a completely different architectural paradigm. It won't act like a reactive search engine or a text generator. It will act as an agentic project manager.
Yes.
It will utilize a separate layer of processing to infer your goals and map out a strategy before it ever routes the task to the generation layer.
And the research provides a literal blueprint for this. It outlines a checklist that separates the blind execution of today from the intent-aware systems of tomorrow. Before an advanced AI generates a single word of output, it must actively identify and define 6 specific elements.
Divers, if you want a framework to evaluate the AI tools you're using, or honestly even to improve your own management skills, this 6-point blueprint is absolute gold. Let's break down the mechanics of each element.
Okay, element number 1 is defining the user's objective or their desired outcomes.
This sounds basic, but mechanically, it requires the AI to pause and parse the latent meaning behind the words. Are we looking for a report, or are we looking for a decision? If you ask an intent-aware AI to, say, write a blog post about our new feature, the AI's first internal step is to flag that the objective isn't the blog post itself.
Right.
It must ask you, is the goal to drive signups, to educate existing users, or to improve SEO ranking? The objective changes the entire structure of the output.
Completely. And then element number 2 is identifying available resources.
This is a massive blind spot for current tools.
It really is.
People ask AI to write marketing plans, design business strategies, or suggest vacation itineraries every single day, but current models rarely stop to ask about the physics of reality. Do you have a $10 budget or a $10 million budget? Do you have a team of 50 engineers, or are you a solo founder working out of a garage?
Right. If the AI doesn't map your available resources, its solution is purely theoretical. It might suggest a Super Bowl ad when you only have the budget for a Facebook post.
Exactly,
Well,
which is intimately connected to element number 3, constraints.
yeah, constraints define the boundaries of the playground. What are the limits? If you hire a project manager to build a bridge, the first thing they need to know is if they have a year to build it or a week. An AI needs to map temporal constraints. It needs to map legal and compliance constraints, like can it use certain language or does it violate industry regulations? It needs to map brand constraints.
So critical. And moving on, element number 4 is the desired audience.
The psychological profile of the end user.
Right. Because a piece of code written for a senior developer needs to look vastly different than a tutorial written for a high school student, even if they accomplish the exact same task. The intent changes based entirely on who is sitting on the receiving end of the information.
That's right. Element number 5 is the required quality.
I find this one fascinating from an energy efficiency standpoint,
Yeah.
because sometimes you just need a rough draft. You need a napkin sketch of an idea just to see if it's even worth pursuing.
Yeah, you just want to get it out of your head.
But other times, you need a polished, publish-ready, highly vetted final product. If the AI doesn't clarify the required quality, it might waste massive amounts of compute power over engineering a simple brainstorming session, or conversely, it might completely underdeliver on a final presentation to a board of directors.
Absolutely. And finally, element number 6, the definition of success, which includes understanding acceptable trade-offs.
Trade-offs are the hallmark of complex problem solving. You can rarely have it fast, cheap, and perfect all at once. If the AI knows that speed is the most critical metric for a specific task, it can make intelligent trade-offs regarding exhaustive detail. It needs to know exactly what a win looks like in your specific context.
So if we look at the complete blueprint, objective, resources, constraints, audience, quality, and definition of success, the prediction is that future AI models will have this intermediary reasoning step. Only after the system has populated those 6 fields will it pass the parameters down to the execution layer.
To help visualize this architectural shift, the source material offers a really brilliant metaphor. They call it the thumbnail concept. I want to break down exactly how this mechanism works in your mind. Imagine you're speaking into a new, intent-aware AI interface. Your literal words travel into the system, and you can visualize them as scattered puzzle pieces. Each piece has a label based on your raw prompt, task, question format.
That represents the chaotic, unrefined data of a standard human request.
Exactly. Now, in a current system, those pieces just get jammed together immediately, and whatever shape they make is your answer.
Usually a pretty messy shape.
Right. But inside an intent-aware AI, there is a delay. The system runs a parallel categorization process. It maps your semantic request against a vast database of historical intents. As it does this, you watch those scattered puzzle pieces organically reorganize. They lock together, they shift, they discard the irrelevant bits, and they transform into a structured, glowing blueprint. And the new labels on this blueprint aren't task and question.
What are they?
The new labels are goal, outcome, and success metric.
Oh, that's beautiful. That visual transformation is the mechanical difference between next token prediction and agentic reasoning. It is the shift from the machine asking, what text should I generate next, to the machine asking, what human outcome am I actually trying to facilitate?
Let's pull the camera way back now. Because if we successfully bridge the intent gap, it doesn't just change how you interact with the chatbot on a Tuesday afternoon. It fundamentally alters the DNA of how organizations operate over decades.
Yeah, it's much bigger than just personal productivity.
This brings us to a concept the research calls intent as organizational memory.
This is perhaps the most profound systemic shift we've discussed today. Think about how a standard corporation records its history. They are incredibly good at recording the what. What product did we launch in Q3? What software vendor did we contract with? What were the exact revenue numbers?
Oh, they have server farms full of databases dedicated entirely to the what.
Right, but they're notoriously terrible at recording the why. Why did we choose the specific CRM software over the competitor? Why did we structure the engineering team into pods instead of a flat hierarchy? What was the underlying systemic problem we were actually trying to solve in 2021 when we made that decision?
And when the people who made those decisions leave the company, that context vanishes entirely. You get the classic scenario where a new manager comes in, looks at a complex workflow and says, this is incredibly inefficient. Why do we do it this way? And the only answer anyone can give is, I don't know, Bob built it 5 years ago and we're too afraid to turn it off.
That is institutional amnesia. It's a huge problem. But intent-aware systems change that dynamic. Because these systems are forced to map the objective, the constraints, and the success criteria before they execute a task, they are automatically generating a metadata trail of purpose. They record the why.
There's a line from the source material that summarizes this perfectly. Purpose survives longer than implementation.
I love that line.
Let's think about the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
The implementation of a solution, the specific software, the vendors, the exact personnel, all of that is highly ephemeral. A company might change its project management software 3 times in a single decade. They might redesign their entire website architecture every 2 years just to keep up with mobile standards.
The tools are constantly in flux. But the underlying intent, the reason they need robust project management, the reason they need a frictionless e-commerce presence remains remarkably stable. The why is durable.
So if an organization is utilizing intent-aware AI, they aren't just getting better code or better reports. They're organically building a searchable, interactive archive of their own corporate purpose. They are capturing intent.
Which means the organization stops losing its memory every time it upgrades its tech stack.
Right.
If you have an AI system that knows why the 2018 database was structured a certain way, maybe because of a specific legal constraint that still exists, then migrating to a 2026 database isn't just a blind data transfer. The AI can ensure the original intent is fulfilled using the superior capabilities of the new tools.
It's the difference between desperately trying to preserve a stale piece of cake versus preserving the master recipe. If you have the recipe, the core intent, you can bake a brand new, better cake whenever you need to, using whatever new ovens have been invented.
That's a perfect analogy.
This leads us to our final exploration today, and it is a crucial pivot. Because we've spent the last hour talking extensively about artificial intelligence, prompt engineering, digital workflows, and algorithms. But when you really drill down to the bedrock, the principles of the intent gap aren't actually about computers at all, are they?
Not fundamentally, no. AI is just a mirror. It's simply the newest, most high-resolution mirror reflecting an ancient, deeply human challenge. The challenge of communication, alignment, and problem solving.
Every single project, every organization, every relationship, and every profession begins with the exact same universal, unavoidable question. What problem are we actually trying to solve?
And if we apply a cross-disciplinary lens, we can see that bridging the intent gap is the foundation of almost every field of expertise. We can look at how human experts use specific cognitive frameworks to bypass literal requests and find the true intent.
Let's dive into some of those.
Let's start with product design and engineering.
Okay, let's take the classic example of designing an office chair. If a junior designer gets a literal brief that says, build a chair that holds 250 pounds, has 5 wheels, and is made of breathable mesh, they might build exactly that. But an expert designer uses first principles thinking. They strip away the prescribed solution, the wheels, the mesh, and they boil the problem down to its fundamental physical truths.
Right, they ask, what is the biological reality of the human spine? What happens to blood flow when a body sits at a 90-degree angle for 8 hours?
Exactly. The intent isn't to build a mesh object with wheels. The true human outcome is. The user must be able to perform knowledge work for 8 hours without experiencing lumbar degradation. The intent dictates the engineering constraints, not the other way around. The literal specs are just one possible implementation of the intent.
Let's apply this to healthcare, which is perhaps the most critical life or death application of finding the true intent.
Yeah, the stakes are high there.
A patient walks into a clinic, they have a severe stomach ache. Their literal request is immediate. Doctor, my stomach hurts. Please prescribe me strong painkillers.
And if the doctor acts like a reactive AI, they just execute the prompt. They write the script, the patient leaves, the symptom is masked.
But a medical expert utilizes a framework called step-back reasoning. They actively step back from the patient's literal request. They understand the patient's latent intent is to be healthy and functional long-term, not just numb for the next 4 hours. So the doctor runs a differential diagnosis. They ask about diet, stress levels, recent travel, family history.
To dig deeper.
Right. They are mapping the biological system to find the root cause, perhaps an ulcer or appendicitis. Giving them the painkillers without the diagnosis is like the AI giving you the 50-page report. It's a flawless, immediate solution to the completely wrong problem.
It's malpractice in medicine, but we accept it as standard operating procedure in technology.
We really do.
What about education and business consulting? We touched on consulting earlier, but in education, this dynamic plays out in every classroom in the world. A student is struggling with a complex math problem. They raise their hand and they ask the teacher, can you just give me the formula to solve this?
The literal request is just a shortcut to a passing grade. The student wants the immediate cognitive relief of having the right answer.
But the teacher knows that the true intent of education isn't to pass a single quiz. The intent is to build a foundational, adaptable understanding of mathematics so the student can solve novel problems 10 years from now. So the teacher refuses the literal request. They don't give the formula. They ask guiding questions, forcing the student to struggle through the logic themselves.
Finally, we can look at this through the lens of personal productivity.
Oh, this one hurts.
Think about your own daily to-do list. How often do we check off 20 minor tasks in a single day? We reply to a dozen emails, we organize our digital folders, we clear out our Slack messages, and we feel this massive dopamine hit of productivity.
We feel like we crushed the day.
But at the end of the month, we realize we haven't advanced our core long-term goals at all. The big project hasn't moved an inch.
Ouch. I feel personally attacked by that example, but it's completely accurate. Why does that happen?
Because we are executing the immediate, literal tasks, the daily prompts of our lives, without utilizing systems thinking. We fail to step back and map our actions against our true constraints and objectives. We don't ask, does achieving inbox 0 actually align with my overarching intent to write a book, or secure a promotion, or spend more time with my family? We get trapped in the efficiency of the microtasks and completely lose sight of the macro effectiveness.
So what I am really observing here, pulling all these threads together, is that while technology is evolving at this breakneck, almost incomprehensible speed, the foundational, deeply human skill of understanding intent remains completely unchanged.
It really does.
It is the ultimate bedrock of effective problem solving. Whether you're trying to coax a marketing plan out of a multi-billion parameter AI model, diagnose a patient, consult for a Fortune 500 company, or just manage your own Tuesday afternoon,
Technology is ultimately just an amplifier. If you feed an advanced system poor intent, it doesn't fix it. It will just amplify your waste and confusion at a scale we've never seen before. But if you feed it clear, rigorously defined intent, it will amplify your success and your capabilities exponentially.
Okay, divers, we have covered a massive amount of conceptual and practical ground today. Before we wrap up, I want to synthesize the core takeaways from the research so you can walk out of here with clear, actionable frameworks for your own life and work. First and foremost, recognize the intent gap. It is that dangerous, invisible space between your literal, surface-level request and your true underlying objective.
Second, understand the psychology of your own requests. Humans default to asking for solutions. We instinctively hand out hammers. But effective problem solvers, whether human or artificial, must act like experts and identify the underlying problem. They need to know we are actually trying to build a house.
Third, the future of AI architecture does not lie in faster text generation. It lies in systems that function as agentic project managers, systems that are forced to define the objective, the available resources, the constraints, the audience, the required quality, and the definition of success before they ever begin execution.
And fourth, recording why you do something creates durable organizational memory. Purpose survives much longer than implementation, and capturing that intent ensures your progress outlives any specific technological tool or software vendor.
It is a profound paradigm shift from prioritizing speed to prioritizing clarity. As we close out today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. We opened this entire discussion by talking about the absolute absurdity of a carpenter blindly swinging a hammer without knowing what they're building. But I want you to turn that lens on your own daily interactions.
Yeah, self-reflection is key here.
The next time you issue a prompt, whether you're typing a command into a cutting-edge generative AI system, delegating a complex project to a junior colleague, or even just sitting down to write your own schedule for the day, I want you to pause for 3 seconds. Step back and ask yourself a very difficult question. Are you just handing out a hammer? Or are you actually taking the time to explain what needs to be built?
Because if you don't know what you are building, no tool in the world, no matter how advanced, no matter how many billions of parameters it has, can help you build it well.
It all starts with intent. Divers, we have a brief, deep dive AI call to action for you this week. We encourage all of you to take the specific frameworks we discussed today, first principles thinking, step-back reasoning, and the blueprint of intent, and actively apply them to your own workflows. The next time you find yourself stuck in a frustrating prompt revision cycle, stop tweaking the words and start interrogating your true objective. Thank you for exploring the intent gap with us today in the classroom. Keep questioning your defaults and keep diving deep.